Have you ever felt like you're between a rock and a hard place? This common English idiom can be confusing for beginner learners. But understanding it can really boost your communication skills. Let me share a funny story that shows how easy it is to misunderstand this idiom. Imagine a new employee named Alex, who was asked to move a heavy rock and a hard piece of wood for a project. Eager to impress, Alex carefully positioned himself between the rock and the wood, thinking that's what his boss meant by between a rock and a hard place. Needless to say, the boss was quite puzzled when Alex got stuck there, unable to move either object. So, what does between a rock and a hard place actually mean? It's a figurative expression that describes a situation where someone is faced with two equally difficult or undesirable choices, with no easy solution. Imagine you need to choose between two tough options, like accepting a job with a long commute or taking a job with a lower salary. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place, unable to find a satisfactory solution. Let's look at some examples of how to use this idiom in different contexts. In a casual conversation, I'm really between a rock and a hard place. I need to decide whether to take the promotion that requires me to relocate or stay in my current job. In a formal setting, the company's management found themselves between a rock and a hard place, when they had to choose between cutting costs or maintaining quality standards. In a negative context, after the accident, the victim was between a rock and a hard place, unable to work and struggling to pay their medical bills. In a humorous context, my kids were between a rock and a hard place, when they had to choose between cleaning their rooms or losing their TV privileges. In a literary context, the protagonist found herself between a rock and a hard place, forced to make a difficult decision that would impact the lives of her loved ones. In a business setting, the company's management team was between a rock and a hard place, needing to cut costs while maintaining productivity and employee morale. On social media, ugh, I'm between a rock and a hard place. Should I go to the party or stay home and study for my exam? To help you remember the meaning of this idiom, think of a person stuck between a large, immovable rock and a solid, unyielding surface. They have no easy way out, just like in a difficult situation. The origins of between a rock and a hard place date back to the early 20th century, during a mining dispute in the United States, symbolizing a situation with no good options. This idiom reflects the universal human experience of facing tough choices with no clear solution. It's a common expression in many cultures, often used to convey a sense of being in a bind or a no-win situation. Some similar idioms include caught between a rock and a hard place, stuck between a rock and a hard place, and between the devil and the deep blue sea. These all convey the same idea of being in a difficult, inescapable predicament. On the other hand, phrases like having a choice or having options would be the opposite of being between a rock and a hard place. I recently used this idiom when my friend was trying to decide whether to accept a job offer with a higher salary but longer commute, or stay in her current role with a shorter commute but lower pay. I told her, "It sounds like you're between a rock and a hard place with this decision." One common mistake is to say stuck between a rock and a hard place instead of between a rock and a hard place. The correct usage is to say you're between the two difficult options, not stuck between them. Another mistake is to think that between a rock and a hard place means being physically trapped, like in the story about Alex. Remember, it's a figurative expression, not a literal description of being stuck. Let's test your understanding with a few questions. 1. What is the meaning of the idiom between a rock and a hard place? A. Being physically trapped. B. Facing two equally difficult choices. C. Choosing between a rock and a hard object. D. None of the above. 2. Which of these is a synonym for between a rock and a hard place? A. Having options. B. Caught in a bind. C. Easy solution. D. None of the above. 3. Which of these would be an antonym for between a rock and a hard place? A. Stuck in a dilemma. B. No clear choice. C. Flexible situation. D. None of the above. In summary, between a rock and a hard place is a common English idiom that describes a difficult, no-win situation. Understanding and using this idiom correctly can really improve your communication skills. Now it's your turn. Share a time when you felt between a rock and a hard place in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more idiom lessons.